We all think we know what abundance means, but what if it isn't about what you have, but how you see? Today, we're going to dig into that very idea, and our guide is going to be a pretty unique poetry club. So let me just ask you this straight up. When you hear the word abundance, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it a pile of stuff you can count, a big harvest, or is it something else, something you feel, a whole different way of looking at things? Okay, let's break this down. On one side, you have the standard definition, right? Abundance as a volume of possessions. More is more. Simple. But on the other side, there's this completely different take, the one we're exploring today. Abundance as a frequency we can actually tune into. It's about the depth of our looking, a way of seeing. Now, this idea of abundance as a frequency, well, it doesn't come from some business school or tech guru. It comes from a poetry club, the Vanambadi PoAItry Club to be exact, and they meet in a really special kind of place. It's called a thinnai. Think of it as a traditional porch, that amazing in-between space that's not quite inside the home but not quite out on the street either. At this club, it's a place where the only ticket you need to get in is curiosity. You don't need a fancy degree, you just need to show up. And really, the entire philosophy of this club was captured in one single, perfect line by its secretary. This is the key to everything we're about to hear. Abundance is not about the size of the harvest, but the depth of the looking. So to really explore this idea, the club invited 5 local people to share a single line of poetry that they carry with them, and this is where it gets good. We're about to hear from 5 ordinary lives, and each one offers an absolutely extraordinary insight into abundance. First up is Mani, a carpenter. He shared this line from the 17th century poet George Herbert. And in the true spirit of the thinnai, you absolutely do not need to share the poet's faith to feel the power in this image. For Mani, this line is his workshop. He sees all the sawdust and the little wood scraps that most people would just call waste, but he sees them as proof of that glass of blessings constantly being poured out, even into a life that always feels a little bit unfinished. Next, we've got Selvi, who's a flower seller. She chose a line from the ancient Tamil poet Thiruvalluvar. And yeah, on the surface, it's about rain. But for Selvi, it's about something way, way deeper. She says her flowers only bloom because the rain is generous and consistent. So for her, abundance isn't really the weather, it's the life-giving food of community. It's about people just showing up for one another, consistently, rain or shine. That's the real abundance. Our third voice is Deepa, an architecture student, and she brought this incredibly simple, beautiful line from William Wordsworth. It's just a line about the simple, undeniable loveliness of a brand new morning. Now, think about this. Deepa spends her days studying materials, structures, things you build. But this line is her reminder that true abundance isn't something she has to design or construct. No, it's the free, brilliant light that hits her desk every single morning. You don't build it, you just wake up to it. All right, our fourth voice belongs to Arul, a retired postman. He chose a line that's fascinating because it doesn't focus on the final harvest, but on something much more fragile, the blossoms that fall long before any fruit can even grow. And it makes perfect sense when you think about his career. After a whole lifetime delivering letters full of hopes and news, Arul's perspective totally shifted. He learned to see abundance not in the final outcome, but in the promise. So for him, those falling blossoms aren't the loss, they're the fair pledges of a future that's on its way. And finally, our last line comes from the great Tamil poet Auvaiyar. It was brought by Ananya, who's a software engineer, and this is such a powerful image of resilience. Ananya connects this ancient wisdom directly to her modern life. You know, when your creative bandwidth is just totally shot, when you feel burnt out, like a dry riverbed, well, she uses this line to remember that there are always hidden springs. The resources are still there, they're just deeper down. So, after hearing all these stories, you might be wondering, okay, how do I actually make a poem a part of my life? Well, the club has this beautifully simple method for doing just that. They say you don't choose a line chooses you, and it usually finds you in one of 3 ways. Sometimes a line itches. It's like a pebble in your shoe that just won't leave you alone. Or a line settles. It just feels like a deep breath, like coming home. And sometimes a line startles you, suddenly reframing a totally ordinary moment in a brand new light. And they make this super practical with what they call tiny practices. For instance, the threshold whisper. All you do is as you walk through a doorway, you just silently say your line to yourself. It's a tiny little act that anchors a huge idea right in the middle of your day.
So what happens when you put all of these different perspectives together? What do you find? Well, you arrive at one powerful, unifying discovery.
When you bring all these voices together, the carpenter's wood, the seller's rain, the student's light, the postman's blossoms, and the engineer's hidden springs, they're all pointing to the exact same truth. Abundance is not a volume to collect. It's a frequency, a channel you can actually tune your attention to at any given moment.
And that leaves us with one final thought, a tiny practice just for you. The next time you feel empty, totally exhausted, just take a moment and trace the words hidden springs on the palm of your hand. It's a quiet little reminder that the water is always, always closer than you think.